We now have a quorum. So let me read, what I'll do is read the members of the committee, and if you would then state your name and say present for the recording, that would be helpful. I'll start with the people that I can see. Barbara Canny.
Here.
Eric Cruz. Eric.
Here.
Lisa Hewitt.
Here.
George Baumgarten.
Here.
Mike Sardina. Mike.
Here.
Here. Tim Davis here. Harbor Master, are you here?
She hasn't called in yet.
She hasn't called you in yet. We don't have any others, but as they come in, I'll have them introduce themselves.
Well, Jack Creighton, I'm here as the Select Board Liaison.
Yes, thank you, Jack.
And Peter Pescatori, I'm here as the bylaw working group liaison.
Okay. Great. Okay. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. We've got a lot on the agenda for today, and we'll generally go through a timeline that George and Mike have developed over the course of the last couple of months, and it kind of helps as a guideline for discussion purposes. There are a couple of issues that I would like to dwell on a little bit. So maybe we'll just start with a timeline, and then as we get into things that are of interest to various members of the committee, we can take them up in a little bit more depth. Thank you.
Can you see that? You can see that. Okay, great.
Yes. Yeah, let's move to the first slide. Okay. The Parker Avenue boat ramp, that is underway from what I understand. We've got, we have a meeting tomorrow, I think, at the boat ramp. It's a pre-bid meeting. Once that's done, then the bids for the work will go out. But all of the funding has been secured and the bids will go out. Once we have bids, a number of bids, the way this has happened in the past is that there will be a group that will gather to review the bids and discuss who might be the best bidder. And that would include town employees, the town engineer, harbor master, and members of the harbor committee as well. So that'll come, and I'm sure all of you are welcome if you want to join that when that comes. But the bids will go out hopefully next week. Hopefully we will get a number of responses to that, and work can commence as soon as the boating season is over and be finished prior to the boating season starting in the spring. Any questions on that issue at this point? Okay, the Government Island Pier, not much more to add to that. That is underway. The permitting process is underway. We've gotten some funding from the Seaport Council. Clearly, it's going to take a lot of funding in the future once we get the plans all buttoned down. But that's moving along. I really don't have much more to report on that. I think there are still Carlos Pena from Foth Engineering is still modifying some of the drawings. As far as I know, Lauren and Brianna, is the town all set with where the Government Island Pier drawings are in the permitting process? Are there any things that the town is waiting for from Foth, or are we moving forward on that?
I'm going to ask Brianna to address that because I think she has the most current information from Michelle Leary, who's been managing that.
Okay. Any comments, Brianna?
No, I don't think there's any additional information that we're waiting on for it. We're just waiting for the final approval.
Okay. Great, thanks. Okay, next slide. Okay, the lift system. Lori, are you on? I see a phone.
I see a phone number, but I don't recognize it as Lori's.
Okay. Well, the last, at our last, we didn't have a meeting, but we had a couple of informational topics, and Lori reported that that was underway, and it would probably be available for Lawrence Wharf next spring. And I talked to Chris Senior this week about it, and they are working to make sure that all the insurance is in place, training is in place, licensing is in place before that is opened and available to the fishermen. But that's something that would be a huge addition to the fleet. And of course, just as a reminder, the idea is that that lift system is going to be designed so that it could be moved over to Government Island once Government Island is completed, and that'll take several years. But in the meantime, it'll be used at Lawrence Wharf.
Hey, Tim, this is George. Just want to point out on the visual that people are looking at, the installation of that is targeted now for the spring. It says September to December of 21, and that is inaccurate. It's targeted for the spring, according to Lori, when we talked with her a week ago.
Yeah,
As you said.
it'll hopefully be available when the fishing season opens in the spring. Okay. The breakwater, this really is part of a larger discussion, and I will bring it up now. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but the breakwater and the seawall remediation, which is the next one, is all part of a climate change discussion. I reached out to the various constituents of the harbor, and it sounds like there's a great deal of interest in having a climate change summit, or a climate summit, or however we want to call it, or name it, to discuss what really needs to happen to protect both the harbor and the town from the events that will come with sea level rising and climate change. So one of the things I would love to have happen, and I've been in touch with the town, the select board, I think, is interested in participating. And Jack, you could, I don't know if you can comment on that, but there seems to be an interest in having both a harbor climate change summit, but also a town-wide one. I am particularly interested in doing the harbor because I think that's where we're most vulnerable. And I think we need to start moving. Again, we're going to have, I believe, funds available to deal with this. So I think the quicker we move to be what I would say is shovel ready for any projects, we should do that.
Yeah, Tim, I can speak to that without,
Okay.
There has obviously not been a vote or an official policy, but I think the Harbor Committee would be, I think you could proceed with the understanding that probably there is a lot of support and the select board for addressing these issues.
Great. Okay, well, what I would.
And thank you, by the way, for your work.
Okay, what I would love to have
Keep
is
it
for a member of the committee to volunteer to lead that project. What it really means is working with the town. Lauren, you're raising your hand. Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry, I just wanted to update you that just in terms of the resiliency, both focusing on the harbor and also town-wide and just looking at resiliency, there is support, at least at the level of, it hasn't had time for a select board broad discussion at the time yet, but I did meet with Chris Senior and Carrie Thompson, the chair of the select board, and there's support there. So we are working on that internally and are looking to do a process that'll be coming to light in the coming weeks and publicizing, but we're happy to work on that with the harbor committee as well.
Okay.
So there's support. I just want to let you know that there's definitely support and the town's already looking at this.
Great. What I would, I guess what I would like to do is emphasize the harbor in this, but not run into conflict with the broader town issues. So if you can help guide that, Lauren and Brianna, I'll ask you as well. If you see ways that we are coming into conflict, please let me know. But I would really, if one of the members of the committee would like to lead the charge on pulling that together, my guess is it's going to be more than one meeting. It'll be probably several. There are consultants that can talk to this issue. Certainly the engineering group within the town has got ideas of what can happen here. And then of course the funding is going to be critical for all of that. So I don't need to know now, but if any of you would like to raise your hand and take the leadership on that, that would be most appreciated.
And
Hey, Tim?
Tim, may I say how important this is? And that I think you can get whoever chooses to do that, you get good support. We do need somebody to pull this together. And I didn't mean to step on your hand raised, George, but go ahead.
No, Tim, I'm willing to take lead for the Harbor Committee, also willing to invite others who might be interested as well. I don't need to be the only one.
Terrific.
Yeah, I'd be interested to work with on this. I also think that there may be other people like Jack Buckley. I also believe we should reach out to Rep. Moschino has done a huge amount of work on this on the state front. So George is a great lead, and I'm glad to help him on that. And Jack just piped in on the chat that he would be willing.
Yes, I know. I've been in touch with Jack. I think Jack's on, actually.
Yep, he just typed in the chat.
Yeah, I think he's on, and he has indicated he would be very interested in participating in that. And Jack, of course, is a wealth of knowledge on a whole bunch of resiliency issues. So his participation is more than welcome. Well, that's great.
Let me just,
George,
Tim, I know, just to clarify with Lauren, it's still not clear to me. Lauren, is the town taking lead to schedule this, or should I work with you? Lisa and I work with you to figure that out.
Yes, let's connect. I'll reach out after this meeting for a time to connect with you and Lisa, Brianna and I, so that we can coordinate on these initiatives.
Yeah.
Perfect.
George, and I might address that as well, and to everybody else and to people who might be interested. The whole idea from the select board's perspective, at least my understanding, is to have committees to give you real power to do this, because it's very difficult for a small group to do that. But if you're going to ask people to volunteer, I think you have to empower them. So as you move forward, George and Lisa, I think you're going to get a lot of support. And we have a town staff like Lauren, who's super. We have people like that who are there to help you do your job. So go for it.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Well, good. Well, let's circle up with Lauren and make sure that, again, that gets underway. I know that Amy Glassmeyer has expressed interest in this, and so she'd be another one. She's got lots of access to information and data. So there's a lot to be done here. I appreciate the offer for help on this. Okay, dredging. Lori, if you're there, can you give us an update on where we stand with the dredging?
Lori has not joined us.
Lori has not joined. Okay. Well, the last we knew, Lori was filling out the forms for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Corps had been by and done their testing in the harbor and in the channel. So that is moving. I have no idea when we might see dredging, but the bigger issue really, and this is something that I think we as a harbor committee, or certainly the CHIP working group, should do, is to, when we've got the bandwidth, is to look at a way to set up a long-term program for dredging, particularly the channel. The channel really needs it on a regular basis, whether it's every 3 or 4 years, because it does fill in, it always has, and it will continue to do that. So whether we have a go it alone strategy of dredging every 3 or 4 years or whatever it needs, or whether we have a relationship with our neighbors, Situate, Hull, Hingham, to do that. I think that's something worth looking at. Okay, next slide. Okay, Captain's Walk planning. I believe let's see, the select board approved a town meeting funding request. Is that where we are, Lauren?
So the most recent approval of funds was actually allocated from a previous budget for
Oh, it is?
consulting
Okay.
funds, so it doesn't need to go to town meeting.
Okay, so we have nominally, what, about $10,000?
A 15.
$15,000. And has John Cavanero signed a contract to do that?
We have a contract and I just need the town manager to sign off on it, which, or no, I'm sorry, we received a scope and I was waiting for the contract to follow up with the scope once we agreed. And now I just need to get signatures once I have that document. So I'll check in with John Cavanero about the status of that, because I was just waiting on him to turn that back over so that we could sign it.
Okay, well, as soon as possible, and I know you've tried some doodles, but the chip, if you could get the chip and and whoever the other appropriate people are to review this and to understand exactly what's going to happen and the implication that may be for other parts of the harbor. And the sea walls and various resiliency things are going to be integrated into that, of course. But I think it'd be good to get everybody together to get our ideas about where that's going to go. So as soon as you can do that, Lauren and Brianna, I say that to you as well. Let's do it. Sooner the better for that one. That's
Absolutely,
great.
I agree. And thank you for reminding me, because I did send out that doodle, but I don't think we ever got a consensus. So I'll recirculate some dates and we'll get something in the calendar.
Okay, I think it can be an on-site. If you want to do that, that would be fine. We can do it, and that might even be more helpful. Of course, with daylight savings ending, it's gonna have to be earlier, or we won't be seeing much. But anyway, I'll leave that to you to schedule. But I think that would be good to get together and talk about where that's going.
Absolutely.
Any other? Yes, Mike.
What's the status of the $4,000 request?
So that status, we don't have that allocated yet, but I would like to connect with you to better understand their request so that I can work on that.
Can I ask a question, please? I mean, I don't know what the $4,000 request is. I mean, obviously, this is a kind of spillover for some chip discussions.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say, Mike, my understanding is that that will come. I think there is support for that. But the first part of that is going to be the Cavanero study that he's going to do. But I think that certainly if Lauren, you could bring Lauren and Brianna up to speed on that. Maybe you can do that on a side note, bring her up to speed. Your proposal that went to the select board. Yes, Lisa, these are a couple of proposals that the CHIP has requested. Actually, we first requested, Mike put together a request to do a conceptual design of the Captain's Walk. And then that kind of morphed into a consulting project for John Cavanero to look at the whole topographic area of where the Harbor Walk is going to be, all the way around from, I would say, from the Oaks to Government Island. And he's got a fairly detailed proposal that he submitted, and that I assume will be part of the contract that will will go in, and the money's been approved for that. So at least we can get started with that. And then I think we follow up with shortly thereafter, or even in tandem with Mike's proposal to do a general rendering of what it might look like.
See, Peter
Okay,
has his hand up.
anything else?
Peter Pescatore has his
Yes,
hand raised.
Peter.
Lauren, could you include the open space committee, open space and rec committee on the Captain's Walk meeting?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of our action items as well.
Great.
I know the
Access-
Historic Commission's interested in that as well, so I'll add
Yeah.
that to my list.
Absolutely. Okay, the next one on here is the Harbor Inn redevelopment. I can tell you that my latest conversation with the owners is that the current building is going to come down sometime before the end of the year. And I think they expected to have their final Chapter 91 approval shortly. So they are confident enough that they're going to get that they will start demolition before the end of the year. That's going to make a huge difference in the harbor in and of itself. But then the other things that are going on, I think we're in for a pretty exciting development in the harbor over the course of the next several years. Okay. Seeing no hands, the next one, Elm Street Corridor. Maybe Lauren, seeing how you're involved in all of these, you can give us a brief update on where the Elm Street Corridor stands. I think we're making some good progress there.
Sure. So the Elm Street Corridor Working Group, which is a branch off the Master Plan Implementation Committee, has been working on the first phase of a design and public engagement process for potential upgrades or improvements to Elm Street Corridor. And there has been, over the past couple of months, there's been 2 public forums, public input surveys, different opportunities to collect input from residents and users of Elm Street, as well as business owners, to try to get a consensus about what a recommendation for this might look like. And the working group, after the last bit of information that came in over the summer, has sort of narrowed down the preferred alternative. And really what it will, in a nutshell, do is make a safer configuration of the intersection closest to the harbor, and provide for improvements for pedestrian and safety improvements along the residential portion of Elm Street. And then it doesn't really propose any sort of structural changes to the village end, but it does allow for improvements, crosswalks, things of that nature. So this is just the early phase. What the group is doing right now is planning for October 28th, actually, which is a Thursday evening. It's going to be a 3rd public forum for Weston and Sampson and the working group to review this recommendation with the town and sort of vet that to the public. And then that'll sort of bring us into the conclusion of the Elm Street process for phase 1. And now what we are currently waiting on any day now is to get word from the state. We had applied for the One Stop Community for Growth grant for $500,000 to cover engineering and design costs that would get us to that shovel-ready project so we could begin construction. That would be sort of in a whole wrapped up phase 2 to get us to shovel readiness in terms of that grant application. What we've done as a parallel to plan for some contingency planning is also to submit a special town meeting request for a portion of the funds, so that if we find out that we are not grant recipients, then we can at least sort of try to get our head around phasing this project so that we don't completely stagnate our progress. But that's where we stand right now. And as I mentioned, we're just waiting any day now to hopefully hear from the state that it's a successful award.
That's great. Thanks, Lauren. I think as far as the harbor is concerned, there are a couple of really key parts of that. The first and foremost is the view corridor that will be created down Elm Street. So that as you come down Elm Street, you will look right out to the harbor. There will be no more building there. So you'll have a nice view right out to the harbor. The second one is the Captain's Walk will come in front of the building, and that will be quite a wide Captain's Walk, open to the public, accessible to the public. And then the third thing is the Fisherman's Well. I've talked to the Historical
Lauren.
Commission. Excuse me? The Historical Commission is interested in doing something more than having a hole in the ground there, but the Captain's Well, I think hopefully they will do something that'll be appropriate for that area. So lots going on with that group. The shellfish. Okay, what should I say about the shellfish? Chris Senior, I tried to get Chris Senior to appoint a shellfish constable who would be an active shellfish constable. He appointed Rick Barrow, and I've met with Rick Barrow. Rick Barrow is a wonderful guy. I don't see him on here now, but I will say that Rick Barrow is a wonderful guy. However, he is totally committed to commercial lobstering during the commercial lobstering season. Rick has no experience in being a shellfish constable. He needs to be trained, needs to be licensed. He says he would do that during the winter, but the problem is once the fishing season starts, I think we're going to lose Rick Barrow and his whatever he is, the shellfish constable. Excuse me. So I've talked to Chris about how to deal with that. And I think Chris is somewhat open to having another person involved, whether we actually have another shellfish constable. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is that the town of Cohasset cannot have any shellfishing, recreational or commercial, without going through the whole drill of having a constable, excuse me, and then having bylaws, and then even more importantly, the support of the town, meaning the select board. I met today in the run in Little Harbor by Cunningham's Bridge with the member of the Marine Fisheries who was checking the mussels for red tide. And he comes during the summer. This was his last trip. Red tide is pretty much gone for now, but I had a long conversation with him. And he basically said that all the waters of Cohasset are shut down for shellfishing because there is no support. There has been no support for years from the town in terms of an active shellfish constable. We don't have bylaws. I've submitted bylaws that have not yet been reviewed. Town council has to review them. But my point is that unless we as a community want to get behind this, the waters of Cohasset will be closed to shellfishing. Now, on the other end of that, there are people in Cohasset that would like to be involved in shellfishing, both recreational and commercial. There are various technologies for commercial shellfishing, deep water shellfishing, and apparently if we were to get the support of the town and get the constable going and the bylaws going, it would very quickly, the state would approve the waters off of the shore of Cohasset for commercial shellfishing. And there are a lot of technologies that I think would be important to look at. We've got support from a number of individuals who'd like to do that, but something we might consider as a community. And if we do have support, I'm happy to continue to push it. There is a member of the Cohasset Police Force that has training in this area. He certainly could be a help. And so we just need to get support to do it.
Tim,
can we
might,
back up for a minute, please? Can we back up for a minute? Has Ricky Bowers been appointed? Has he been hired? Has he been appointed as a shellfish warner?
Rick Barrow?
Yeah, I mean, has he been officially engaged by the,
Yes, he's been appointed. He's been appointed. He's had a check sent to him. He has not cashed the check as of the last time I met with him because he didn't feel it was appropriate, seeing how he wasn't doing anything. He was fishing. He said that he would try to try to catch up on all the things that he was supposed to do over the winter. I like Rick Barrow. He's a perfectly nice guy. He's hardworking. He's enthusiastic. He's interested in shellfishing, but it's not going to do it. If we want Cohasset to be involved in either recreational or commercial shellfishing, we can't have somebody who takes the summer off from those duties.
Sure. No, I appreciate what you're saying.
That's where
The
that
other
is.
question I have, is, I know you sent the bylaw to me and I reviewed it and I don't see any big problems with it, but who is our new town council? And my understanding from.
We have a firm and there's a person, Lauren, you might remind me of her
Oh,
name.
what's the name of the firm?
It's, we're using KP Law and our primary contact is, her name is Carolyn Murray.
Yeah.
And I viewed the chip recording of the last meeting that you had, and it's my understanding that we're still waiting for a designated person from the firm for certain things.
So I actually met with Carolyn and Chris Senior last week, I think. Yeah, it was last week, to bring her up to speed. And so she's going to be looking into these items for us.
Okay.
And then if it's necessary, depending on sort of what other support this committee needs, and it may be that we have another, one of their associates help in, but as of right now, we're working with Carolyn.
Yeah, let's get the 250 rather than the 450. Look at a bylaw for big firms. I mean, these are pretty formalistic. I can't imagine that that isn't very similar from one municipality to the next. And looking at it, it looked pretty rudimentary and acceptable. So.
Okay, well.
Yeah, and this, by the way, is a great example, and Tim alluding to what you mentioned earlier, this is a great example of how the committee system can really serve the town, because it really isn't, it needs the community input to say, yes, we want to do this. It should come through the Harbor Committee. It's a way to empower the Harbor Committee. And so when people on the Harbor Committee and the subcommittees are seeing that they're really doing things that are important, it also makes it possible for these things to come to the select board kind of pre-vetted. And it's very important. And so I think this is a great idea. I think this is the forum that it should be addressed. So anybody who wants to do it, go for it.
Okay.
Great. But what are the next steps on the bylaw? I mean, are we going to hear back from Carolyn Murray that this is acceptable and it's in appropriate AG approved form, or what's the next step, Lauren?
I think that would be Tim to go to her.
I was invited about a month ago to meet with the new town council during the first week in October. Well, it's now the third week in October, and I know the town council has probably got a lot of other things that are considered far more critical and important. But at some point, I will continue to bug the town manager to get a meeting with the new town council to discuss the bylaw.
I'd be interested in attending that meeting, Tim.
There are a couple of things that need attention from the town council, and that's one of them.
So that is one of the topics that was discussed at our meeting last week, and she is reviewing. We sent over the material that Tim provided. So she is looking at this, and she will be giving us feedback on that so that you can proceed. And then given the timeline, I would say in terms of next steps, if this got a green light, we would look for annual town meeting as
Sure.
soon as available.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Yeah, and Lauren, if you would ask her for that, I am more than willing to give her a call if necessary. But I think that we ought to indicate that there is importance that, I mean, certainly Tim's chairman of a major committee, she should be meeting with him.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you all for that. Okay.
I
Hey,
just,
Tim?
one quick question.
Yes.
Maybe I need to go back and read what's happened because I know I missed the last meeting, but what happened to the oyster farms and the shellfish bylaw?
That's a whole different committee, Barbara.
I know, but how are we gonna, if we then permit people to do it for profit or for fun?
Barbara, maybe we can have a sidebar on that. The oyster farm that you're talking to is in Situate and and doesn't have anything to do with Cohasset. So
It just seemed,
and that's
okay.
I have to be careful about the hats that I'm wearing here. So
Right.
I don't want to confuse things, but I'm happy to talk to you offline about the oyster
Okay.
farm, Barbara.
No, I don't want to talk about the oyster farm. I want to talk about the shellfish. But I'll talk to you, I'll clarify it later. Thanks.
That's a legitimate question, Barbara. I mean, because obviously it's the same category of fishing. And so,
Why are we saying we don't want oysters, but we do want,
Nobody
Sure.
said we don't want oysters. Nobody is saying we don't want oysters.
Oh,
We,
okay.
the harbor plan that we all approved supports aquaculture,
okay,
including shellfishing. Oysters, clams, mussels, whatever, does support that. And we're supportive of that. And I think Cohasset as a town is supportive of that. It has to be done appropriately. It has to be done on property that is appropriate and not private property, where people who own the property object to having it there, which is what's happened in Situate. So, you know, I think if we do this appropriately, we can have a new industry, really, of aquaculture industry in Cohasset that can supplement and augment the lobster fishing as the lobsters migrate north during the warming of the seas.
I see.
So anyway, that's kind of a pitch for aquaculture. Lots of ways to do it, but we need to do it appropriately. That's all.
Right. Okay, thanks.
And by the way,
So
I'd
Tim,
love to
just
have the $150,000 in legal fees that Friends of Bassing's Beach has spent on this issue.
Yeah, really, truly.
Okay.
Tim, I don't know if you heard me, but I would like to attend the meeting with the town council when you talk about the shellfish bylaw.
Okay, Lauren, would you make a note of that?
Noted.
Okay. Okay, the governance working group.
Yeah, I'd like to address that. I know
that.
at the last CHIPS meeting, I noticed that there was some reference to not getting some stuff done. I think that was an allusion to me. So I wanted to give some background to the governance working group. And for those of you who weren't members of the Harbor Committee, I just want to give you a sense of where we got from point 1 to point 10. You know, we had the master plan that we adopted, the municipal harbor plan. And then after that, we realized that, you know, there's a massive amount of projects that had to be looked at. And so the group, through Lauren's good work, had a working meeting around how to break up the various proposals. And Lauren suggested, and I think we all agreed, that to break things into two groups. One group was the CHIPS and the other group was a governance working group. At that time, we also drafted charges for both committees. We presented them to the selectmen. We had them adopted. And fortunately, the CHIPS working group was a more natural fit for many members of the committee and from other people such as George and Mike, et cetera, and other town people. So they went on their way, they did their work. We started to then get the charge adopted by the selectmen on the governance committee. We had to go back and forth a couple of times. It was adopted. And then I started to try to identify individuals who would like to be involved. I have 3 or 4 individuals who would like to be involved. They had summer problems, weddings, et cetera. They're 2 very serious candidates. And I've spoken at length to not only several of the selectmen who promised me once we get those names in, that would be great. One of the problems is that the present application for working for appointments, you know, is very confusing. And I know there's been a kind of a, some people haven't understand when they go in, how to fill it out, et cetera, et cetera. And then most recently, I spoke to Brianna about this and, you know, the fact that it wasn't moving along. And she felt that maybe that the selectmen didn't want some of these subcommittees to be appointed now. Well, since that time, I've spoken to several selectmen and they said that's probably a misunderstanding, that as soon as that some names would be put in, that they'd be happy to appoint the governance subcommittee. So that's the update. I have some really good candidates. Someone else told me another name today that I will follow up on. And it's my understanding is that as within 2 weeks after we got applications in, they will be appointed. The reason for those of you who weren't part of the committee beforehand, there's 2 almost distinct different tasks. And we were hoping to have lots of people on the Harbor Committee being involved in them and not just having an overlap for all the tasks that have to be done. Tim, I don't know if you think that's a fair assessment.
I think it's fine, Lisa. I think I mean, certainly there are a lot of issues that are appropriately done by the governance working group. You know, I would love to have an active, engaged working group that looks at governance, because the waterways of Cohasset are really a hodgepodge of governance, some private, some public, some quasi-public, and there are a lot of issues that maybe we don't want to change the way that the various waterways are governed, but we should certainly look at them and benchmark them against other communities that do this, and that's really the main
Yeah,
thing.
and to the credit of other groups that have been kind of byproducts or subgroups of this, the Harbor Committee, a lot of that work was done. And so I think it won't be that difficult to do once we get the right people in the room and or on the Zoom or in the square, as we say in my office, to roll. But I didn't want anyone to think that no effort had been put into trying to get the governance committee rolling.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Okay. The last one is administrative, doesn't really need much updating. You know that Lauren and Brianna are working with the Harbor Committee and with the CHIP, helping immensely to keep this moving forward. We got a lot in front of us. So a couple of things I'd like to do. First of all, oh, we do have a final slide. Okay, the old salt house. As far as I know, the old salt house is active. It's the intention is to renovate it somewhat. The retaining wall is there, and that's active. What is going to happen with Atlantica, I don't know at this point. I mean, there are lots of ideas about what might happen there, but that is to be determined. Seawall maintenance, that really is it's an ongoing thing. The harbor master deals with that with the town engineering, and that is ongoing. Now, of course, that will come into the whole discussion of resiliency when we have that discussion, because the seawalls really, if we're gonna do this right, I think we're gonna need to really attack the seawalls. I know that we get on a normal high tide, we get flooding from Howard Gleason Road all the way around the harbor to Margin Street and Border Street. And so we really need to take a look at that. Is that something we want to live with as the sea level rises and the storm surges come, or do we want to really attack and prevent that from happening? Something important to look at. Okay, I've got a couple of other things, but before I do, does anybody have any comments, questions, thoughts? Perhaps while we're here, David, could you introduce yourself and say hello? David Daffini? No? Okay. Craig Rosenquist? Are you there? I see you there. Are you want to say hello? No. Okay, then we've got.
Sure. I'll say hello. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for joining us. What is your interest in this?
Well, I'm just listening in to the meeting. That's all.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to have you with us, and certainly if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me, and I'm happy to answer them.
Sure.
We have somebody on 2 phones. If anybody has any questions on the phones, and we have Jack Buckley. Jack, do you want to say hello? wave your hand.
Hey, Tim.
Hi, Jack. Nice to have you with us. Yeah. While I have you, Jack, I will just ask you what, and maybe Susan has the answer to this. What was the result of the eelgrass study at CSCR this summer? Any results? Anything published?
No, we haven't published our results.
I have to get the students back in here for the fall. We took data. I have a personal suspicion that the eelgrass did not do very well with the coffee colored water that happened as a result of the many rains that we had. But I don't have the data to prove that yet. But most of our research is something that we've pulled together for our State of the Harbor.
Okay,
event.
great. All
That we're
right.
doing, we're continuing to do our projects here. I'd also like to say that, if there's Department of Marine Fisheries people coming, if there's hydrology departments coming, those are the people that make the life richer for students and young people and can enthuse young people about working on and getting involved in the harbor and its issues, and maybe even joining the harbor committee so that we're not all old people on here.
Speak for
I would
yourself,
say-
Susan.
I would say, as
Speak for
myself,
yourself.
I am speaking for myself. I'm totally speaking for myself. I mean, we need
You
some
got a
younger
long way, you
generations.
got a long way to go, Susan, before you're called an old person.
Well, thank you, but we need the young generations involved. And I also think that if we can't get them involved in actually attending the meetings, we at least need to plan for them and think about the things that they would probably say and probably think about what we do. So sometimes that requires a real long-term thinking approach. And I think that it's a challenge to us all to be somebody at these meetings who future generations would be proud of.
Great. I agree. Okay. One thing that we do, administrative thing, we need to approve the minutes from August. You've all had them. Could I hear a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, Lisa has moved the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, and if you could state your name and say aye or nay. Mike Sardina,
Aye.
Lisa Hewitt,
Aye.
Barbara Canny,
I,
Eric Cruz,
Aye.
George Baumgarten,
Aye.
Susan Bryant.
I didn't get to read them, so abstain.
Okay, you can abstain. I think we've
Sorry,
got
I
a
had students out on the harbor.
Tim Davis, aye. That's majority. They will be approved with one assumption, one abstention. Any other, there's somebody in the chat room here. Who's that? Oh, Jack Buckley. He's already chatted. Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Wait, we can't see Jack's chat.
No, he was on the phone. He's over here. He's over here with this little shell over there. He just talked.
He wrote
He just-
earlier when they were discussing climate and resiliency that he was willing to participate.
Yes, that's what he was doing. Okay.
I'd like
Anything
to
else?
make a comment, by the way, Tim. I look at everybody here. First of all, I think we all owe Tim a great tale of gratitude for the work he does. He's working tirelessly. But I also think, as I look at all of you who've donated your time, very important for the way in which we govern Cohasset, for volunteers to do what each of you are doing right now. And I also think it's important for you to know that the select board is behind you. And when you come to decisions, I think the select board will implement them. So you have some real power and you have some real decision making, and the town really depends upon your judgment. So really thank each and every one of you very, very much.
Well, thank you, Jack. And I will reiterate, thank you all for your time. We've got a lot to do, but I think at the end of the day, if we're successful and even a part of it, Cohasset can be a very, very exciting harbor for all of the community. And the accessibility to the harbor is one that we've talked about for years, and making it accessible to all. So a lot to do. Any questions in the meantime, please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk about any of these issues. Lauren and Brianna will be in touch on the various meetings as we go forward. But so with that, enjoy the holiday season. We'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.